Let me know when your whole life goes up in smoke means it's time for a promotion, Stanley Tucci tells Anne Hathaway in The Devil Wears Prada. Do you remember that line? This also applies to Grey's Anatomy. If someone obtains all they desire at Grey Sloan, they should be extremely vigilant because everything else in their life is likely going to fall apart right in front of them. Lucas has been hit by the curse this week. Recently, I've felt a lot of sympathy for Adams. As they progress, he is always reminded that he will be trapped repeating the year whenever one of his students celebrates a new surgical victory. For what purpose? Because he broke the law and operated on a patient without supervision when his attending collapsed and a patient died while he was watching. We all recall Izzy taking a heart and cutting an LVAD wire just to see Denny Duquette die, don't we? Let us rest. Lucas finally got a respite this week after pouting around the hospital for weeks and pleading with anybody who would listen, mostly Richard, to help persuade Catherine to undo his remediation. Richard may have been reluctant to speak with Catherine out of concern that he would exacerbate the situation, but he used some scheming to get Lucas to work for Catherine for the day. After all, Lucas can demonstrate to Catherine what a wonderful surgeon he is, so why allow someone else tell her? Catherine's busy schedule is the only issue. She's occupied with phoning insurance providers. She is occupied with patient care. Apparently, she's busy reprimanding, looks at notes, POTUS. I would have loved to see that now. The main point is that Lucas's frantic attempts to demonstrate his expertise and abilities are not tolerated by Catherine, who lacks the time or patience to do so. Catherine dismisses him with her characteristic coolness and terrible side-eye whenever he attempts to impress her while caring for Navy, a patient whose transverse vaginal septum has filled her uterus with blood from periods she was unaware she was experiencing. In the end, she informs Lucas that the only way to win her approval is to discover a surgical procedure that is less medieval than the only one available to us in the US, and that, as far as they are aware, does not exist. Charlotte and the American healthcare system are both typical. Navy, poor Navy. Not only does she have a cute surgical resident talking about her uterus, but her best friend is also chatting up the boy she likes, who still has the audacity to ask her to tutor him. By the time this all blows out, I doubt they will be signing each other's yearbooks, but for now, Navy is too preoccupied with Lucas operating on her to pay attention. Because, to his astonishment, he did discover an Australian miracle protocol. However, Lucas does the difficult thing and pretends to perform an emergency surgery and bows out to protect Navy's dignity when he realizes how embarrassed she is at the thought of him staring at her on the table. Catherine may not have been impressed by all of his showboating, but it works. This is amazing news by all accounts. Adams and his fiancée Simone will be able to progress together and plan their careers side by side, as they will no longer be separated from their class. Furthermore, given that she has been requesting that he return to the intern frat house, the timing couldn't have been more ideal. Yes? Well, that's a funny thing. Simone is our new Meredith, you know? That's not solely due to her surgical expertise and having an Alzheimer's-afflicted relative, as we know. Like Mer, she has trouble committing. Simone takes a large gasp that is only visible to us and chooses to put a stop to the moving-in process when Lucas begins to talk endlessly about their futures and plans for the future. Rather, she invites Lucas to join her for supper at Joe's. This will probably be a huge deal next week, or the week after, since he is too elated about his big success to notice. But sigh in the interim. However, enough about these two and their ephemeral bond. Was anyone else observing the interaction between Jules and Winston, her new mentor, on the roof? When they descended again, Weber could see it in Winston's eyes. He also gave Winston a disguised but unmistakable warning about it, as any good boss would. I would like to know if we truly want another internship/attendance arrangement. Is that where we're going? When Jules became enamored with the cardio attendants last year and reprimanded Winston for his contempt for professional cobblers, some of us had a sneaking suspicion that this was what was going to happen. Hey. However, when I watched Jules and Winston on the roof, I wasn't sure whether it was the true direction of things. In fact, it was one of those she's looking at the view, but he's looking at her scenarios, which raises the prospect that Winston might harbor feelings for Jules for some time before she realizes it. To be honest, I would much rather Winston simply go out with that woman with the pugs that Weber was attempting to pair him with earlier, even though I might enjoy it a little more. She would not be a co-worker, at least. Since one of the patients was a window washer who crashed through the glass, I suppose we should talk about more of the patients now, although to be honest, they were rather dull. However, none of these stories had any tension or a genuine sense of danger. Even though Jules and the window washer's wife appeared somewhat frightened when Winston performed his cardio god thing, my emotional reaction to the procedure was flatline. In addition to Navy, our other patients included a youngster who was in dire need of a bathroom break and his mother, who was hurt when the window washing machine entered the room. You never really got the impression that either was in any actual danger in either situation. They primarily seemed to be there to pass the time and encourage some doctor-to-doctor chat, which is understandable given that this is a hospital drama. But all in all, they didn't impress me. The stakes in this episode seemed relatively low for the most part. It's barely significant that Lucas and Simone are arguing again, and I'm holding off on feeling anything for Winston and Jules until things have had a chance to settle down. What else? By the end of the hour, Simone and Blue had settled their disagreements regarding roommate problems. After Levi left for Texas, Ben Warren, who had no friends in his class, opted to pair up with Taryn, who had a lot more work and less support, in order to get aid preparing for his boards. Ben and Taryn played superheroes together and tried to help Fareed Fat by guiding him around the hospital, which was adorable in a way that was quickly forgotten.